Good afternoon. This is Jimmy Ralph. I'm the CEO of Board of Advisors, and we're here at the Ritz-Carlton in Las Colinas, Texas, just outside of Dallas, for our manyth meeting here. We moved out here to centralize the travel for our members because we've got so many now on the West Coast. So one flight, and you're here in Dallas at the Board of Advisors membership. And today on our podcast, we're going to be interviewing George Rivera, and wait till you hear this story. So let's get into that, and here we go.
Hey, Jimmy.
George, glad you're here.
Hey, thank you for having me.
This is super. We got a chance to talk a little bit out in the hallway, and what you're going to talk about today is very dear to my heart, with 5 kids and 5 grandkids, and thinking about the evolution that's going to become. We tend to start thinking, as our hair turns a little bit, we start thinking about some of those things, and not only thinking about it, but you're actually doing something about it. With a couple of really exciting brands and books, the one that's really catchy out of the box is the Buyback Time, and then you've got the ideology of before they stop asking, right? You want them to keep asking, because that means you're interacting with them. And then your new book, the 18 Summers, which I'm anxious to hear about that too. So this is something I love, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. So you want to kind of start out with how you decided to make this not only your mantra, but your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always start with my dad's pretty much near last words. 2 weeks before he passed away, he said, "Don't miss Leo's games. I miss too many of yours." And the second he said that, it smacked me in the face like a ton of bricks. I was instantly transported to my high school gym, where he might have been to only one out of about 40 basketball games. And I remember I'd score a basket and I'd look to the stands hoping to see, hey, maybe this is the second game my dad went to. But he wasn't there, and my teammates would score and their dads would be there cheering like they won the championship. And I remember looking at another dad wishing that, hey, I wish that was my dad. And that would have crushed my dad, because he wasn't a bad man, but he was the typical cash rich, time poor person that I help today. Successful on paper, but the family gets little to none of his time. And so that was nice closure to whatever that was as a child. I'm not a therapist, so I don't know how to put a name on that, but the current day, when he made that statement, I realized that I was becoming version 2 of my dad. And I remember making the commitment then that this ends here, this generational thing, whatever it is. Because now, I'm doing it to my son, and my son at the time was only 10 months old, and he's learning how to walk and talk, and I'm depending on my wife to send me these pictures. But I'm not presently there. So I'm like, this ends here, but it has to start tomorrow, because I'm working 16 hours. And of course, like most founders, when they say tomorrow, it's never really tomorrow. In my case, it was 3 years later. And it took me scaling my company to numbers that I'd only dreamed about. I'm printing money. I'm very, very successful, but I'm hating life. And I know hate's a strong word, but I was hating life because it was ripping my family away from me, or me from my family. But either way, the net result was the same. And I got to the point where I wanted to do one of 2 things with my business. I either wanted to sell it, or I wanted to burn the thing down. But you can't snap your fingers and sell a business. You got to list it, market value, LOIs. They fail at an 80% rate. So that's not going to solve my problem tomorrow. But I can unplug the servers and just live with the breakage. I'm well funded. It'll give me my family back, my sanity back, and I could just rebuild the lifestyle that I want. Not exactly the best decision, though. A coach and a mentor.
Or was it? We don't know yet, right?
Yeah. Well, a coach and a mentor lovingly walked me off the ledge, and he said, "Stop doing what you don't like doing, and keep doing what you're good at." And that's when I started doing the work for myself that I now help other founder dads go through as well.
That's fantastic. You pioneered that journey, which I think we all think about, but probably think about it more than we act on it, because it is so hectic in this world, and those things you should get to, you don't quite get there. Now, how old are the kids?
Yeah, so 4 total. So the 2 oldest are from my wife, my stepdaughters. They're already out of the house. 31, 28, and then I've got a daughter who's 17, lives with her mom, and then we have an 11-year-old, my wife and I, and yeah, those are the age ranges. Quite a good variety there.
Wow, well, I understand that. I range from 35, which I think is 4 years older than your oldest. My oldest is 35, and then I've got the youngest is 17, which is so we in total years. I think we about are on the same run rate there. So that's fantastic. It's so much fun, and to have those different personalities and watch them grow up and watch them evolve, and it's a very important, passionate subject to me as well, and so that's I was so thrilled when we could get together and chat through that. We might need to make this an hour and 24-minute podcast. But, we'll certainly do follow-up. So that kind of led you to the concept. The buyback time was sort of the generator of the cash rich, time poor concept, right? Which I think is very well said, and those are things that you can just embed upon you. I mean, it's so the cash rich, time poor, is that sort of the slogan for all your companies, or everything you're doing? Does that sum it up the best?
Yeah, that's
I think I know what you're talking about, but for those that don't, does that really sum it up?
That's it. Yeah, successful on paper, but time poor because the family gets the burned out, stressed out leftovers of dad. And, there's this big lie that founder dads tell themselves. They'll say, I can either have a successful business or I can have a good family, but I can't have both. And I'm living proof that you can have both. Like when I went through my own transformation, implementing the Buyback Time Formula for myself, the name didn't exist then. I didn't know what a framework was or a bottleneck was. I was just doing the work. And I went from working 90 hours a week to living semi-retired, never working more than 30 hours a week within 2 years, more than doubled my income. But the most impressive of all of that was like how my dad said, don't miss Leo's games. I never missed any of his games. In fact, at 8 years old, I taught him how to negotiate real estate. There was a property that went up for sale near one of our vacation properties, Airbnbs. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be competition, because we're used to already being top of the market there. And we like it that way because we get looked at as, oh my gosh, they're the best house. Let's send them referrals. And but this other one came on, and I already know the numbers. I'm used to buying real estate in Austin, Texas, which is a little high compared to rural northern Michigan. And so I'm like, yeah, I know these numbers. We're just going to buy it unless it's a pile of sticks. Let's go look at it. And the old me would have said, son, here's an iPad. There's a couch over there. Go play your hearts out. But I'm like, nope, this is the new me. Son, you're going to make the deal. I coached him a little bit. I told him, we're going to close in 30 days, leave the furniture, leave the dock, and, we're going to turn this around quickly. Now go tell the realtor. And he was like, looked at me like I was crazy. We go in the house. Realtor's waiting for us. And he's this really tall guy. He's looking down at my son as he's talking. And he's like, oh my gosh, little kid talking closing dates and all this stuff. He looks over at me pretty much with his eyes. He's asking me, is that the offer? And I'm like, yep, whippersnapper spoke. That's the offer. And we got the house. And I love the ripple effects of that, because I can see him one day with his kids saying, Grandpa used to take me to go buy real estate, and now you kids are going to make the offer. So it's not just memories, but also just like the transfer of that. It's got me excited. And so first I had to do it for myself, and now I'm like, okay, the world needs to hear this message.
Mm-hmm. No, that's something to be so proud of. It's at least you got it, somewhere along the way. And I know that's your ambition, to help others, to do it. I did a pretty good job of it, but I always wished I could do better. And it just, the time flies by so fast. But I was able, when my oldest son was an accomplished junior golfer, and so we did the junior golf tour literally year round, and I was able to get with him. I've always been fortunate as an entrepreneur to be able to stand around the back of the building and be on a phone call, so the wind wasn't blowing too hard and everybody pictured me in a conference room. But I've kind of had that. My next son played D2 college football up in the Northeast. I went to every one of his games and took my little one, who's now 17, to all those. My daughter did competitive cheerleading. My next daughter did equestrian. We did everything except find any way to have an economic benefit of all the kids doing athletics, because they all did. It went from golf clubs to horses. So,
oh wow!
But I enjoyed all those moments. I wish there were more. I wish I could rewind them. But I think the other thing that's important that we're all learning is that if you can do these principles that you try to teach and you are teaching, in your efforts, as the kids age, and this is what I've noticed, and the grandkids start coming, those values that that you taught them or you demonstrated to them, then all of a sudden we're not sad that they're gone anymore, or that they're moved out of the house or they're moving on, because they feel the same. They feel that love and connection and affection and generosity of their time and all that. Is that right? I mean,
that's true.
That's what I'm feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like it pays off for that's the best way to put it, is the tightness and the bond and like I've said, and we talked about earlier, like I see it with our sons. We're training our replacement in this world, and with our daughters, we're showing them what a man looks like, so that those red flags go up quickly. If a man's maybe not talking to a woman the right way or doesn't open her door, she's like, oh no, that's not how my dad did it, and that helps with a lot of issues down the line.
That's just outstanding. I'm just crazy about this subject because I'm living it. So what do you do with the man or the lady? Of course, it could be the lady that's got the super stressful 90-hour job, or what do you do? Your first conversation has to be with them where they say, I can't, I've got this, I've got that, I've got a $20,000 mortgage on the house, I've got these 8 cars, I've got these 4 tuitions, I can't interrupt that, and I'm an entrepreneur, so chances are I didn't necessarily inherit a lot. This is first generation stuff here. I just don't have time. I'd love to do it, and I tell them I love them every morning, and I call them every day, every other day, at least a couple times a week when I'm on the road. Right? That person. How do you break through that?
Yeah, well, that's the another lie, is that we can't have both. We can't have a successful business and a happy family, or a family that we're able to be present for. And I'm here to say that you can, but you have to start first with the desire to do that, and then implement. Now, kind of transitioning to some business frameworks here, is implement what I call the Time Liberation Trifecta. But even before doing that, you need to figure out where are you the bottleneck in your business, and then get a list of things that you shouldn't be doing, and then you implement the Time Liberation Trifecta, which is eliminating anything that doesn't move the needle, automating anything that repeats, and then delegating, but delegating with ownership, not just delegating the tasks. And so doing that is how you get your freedom back. And I know there's people out there listening that are probably like, oh my gosh, it sounds great, but like I'm just nervous, I'm afraid, I'm scared.
Sure.
There is a little bit of a leap of faith you have to take, but what I tell people is just dip your toe in, just delegate something, get something off your plate that's maybe important but not catastrophic if it doesn't go right, and practice with that. And once you get a little bit of success with that, you get a little bit of your time back, you're gonna forget about it. Like, yeah, I want to do this with everything I possibly can, so that the time you get back you can give to your family. And then when you're working, you're only working on what I call the zone of genius activities, stuff that you were born to do. And some of that can include like strategic relationships, networking, like we're doing here at this event, entering new marketplaces if you've got a product-based business, things that actually bring revenue to the business, not other things, important, and they support the business, but they're not revenue generating activities that the founder should be focused on.
Interesting. Yeah, it's that's just so. I think about the times that I've hit around the corner to be out of the wind on a conference call, and was stressed to make sure I got on that. And at the time we get so caught up in those events or those situations. I always tried to cheat the system enough, so I was doing a very good job in taking care of my companies, but I was also at least pretending to watch that sporting event or that spelling bee or whatever it was. And then you walk away from that and you think about it a week later, and you say to yourself, that wasn't a big deal. I don't even remember what the call was about, right? But at that moment in time, it took the precedent over the most important thing in the world to you. So
yeah,
that's just that mental block that you're endeavoring on fixing, which is very admirable. I mean, that's a great cause, and it sounds like a great business, because I know a lot of us would pay you a lot of money to help us fix that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's about getting, restoring the bond with your family that's been broken over years of, yeah, I'll be there. And then, oops, I can't. And, we're always arguing with, probably with the spouse, but at least in our own heads about, that tension of, well, I want to be there, but the business is what pays the bills. And if I'm not here, then I can't be there fully present.
Sure.
So it's about freeing the mind. And there's deeper things like identity issues and even like childhood trauma and wounds that sometimes people bring into adulthood and then into their working life. Like one of them for me briefly that I can get into was I was always seeking my dad's approval. And even after he passed away, I was still like being the hero to my business because I got a dopamine hit by solving their problems and challenges. But the thing is, I wasn't being a good leader to them. I thought I was. Hey, come to George when you need the answer. But I wasn't training them on how to think for themselves. So like if they were to go off to another job, what would they say on their resume? That, I just gave George all the problems and he put the fires out. That's not teaching them anything. It all started to change when I empowered them to make their own decisions. And I gave them guardrails where they could operate in, but more often than not, they'd figure out the solution to anything that they'd used to have to come up to me and ask for. So, breaking that was key for me to finding my freedom, kind of releasing the old identity patterns of being needed there.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really fascinating. I know that you just did a rebrand that reminds me of something that's pretty cool. You've done a rebrand of 18 Summers, right? And that's sort of the theme around it. And when I heard that right when you launched that brand, I thought about a member of ours that's been a member of Board of Advisors probably for the last 10 years, and he lives in Australia and comes up for our events all the way from Australia. It was one of those almost accidental introductions, and he fell in love with the community here and what it could do for him to take our ideas back and implement them in his business in Australia. But then he's also a person whom I'm going to make sure you guys talk, because it'll probably be a 2-hour call, because he's very passionate about life and about kids and about all of that, and he's found a way to do it. And he talks about 15 summers because that's sort of what him and his friends and families do down there, is they cherish their summers, and that's kind of how they measure things. And he started telling me that there were, I guess I won't say how many teen summers he thought he had left of relevancy, I guess, and so he started doing that countdown, and it's 10 less than it was when he introduced that concept to me, which is frightening.
Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those things that wakes you up and you say, whoa, if you start thinking about it in that that a little bit more minute environment, it causes you to really open your eyes. So I'm glad you're doing that. So how do you came up obviously with the 18 summers, is that we have 18 years with our kids. I believe that if you do the right thing in those 18 years, then you've got a lifetime with those kids and grandkids and great grandkids. But talk to me a little bit about how you came up with the idea and what it means to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, at day 0, we get 18 summers with all of our children. When most founders realize that fact, usually there's a lot less than 18 summers. I hear some say, oh my gosh, I only have 6, or I've got 3, or I'm out of summers. And like you said, even post 18 summers, there's still a great opportunity there. And but it all starts in those first 18 summers of how those summers were lived. And I know a lot of us don't live any of those stretches perfectly, but once we're aware, it's like, okay, now we have no excuse. We know that we have a limited window here to make the maximum impact. And then that's how you get that great relationship post those 18 summers. And now you don't have a book named 18 Summers.
I will soon. Your book is Buyback Time, right?
So I got 2 books. Buyback Time Formula is more business focused. I do sprinkle some of the family and the reason why I did it, some of my dad's story in there, but it's more mechanics and frameworks and structure, workbooks, and it's what I did to get out from 90-hour work weeks down to living semi-retired, doubling my income at the same time. But I also realized that there was a need for more emotional-based writing for the high-performing founder dads that I work with, and it's called Before They Stop Asking, because at some point, our children are going to stop asking for our attention. I'll tell you a story. When my son was 3, I trained him to ignore me. I had an office, a home office, and clear door into my office. And I'm on a phone just like every entrepreneur or typical entrepreneur. Zoom calls and just back-to-back calls. He'd come up and knocking on the door and a little paper or something he wanted to show me, and I just say, just give me 5 minutes, or I'd kind of like mouth that out, and then he's like, okay, and then he goes off. And of course, when we say 5 minutes, it's never 5 minutes. Right. It could be 30 minutes, it could be 2 hours, sometimes it could be never. And so when I did that so many times, he stopped coming up to me. And then on one of the last times he did that, I'd go up to him and say, hey, son, what do you want to show me? And this was like an hour or two later. And he's like, I don't know, saw a squirrel. Moment's gone. Sorry. Mm-hmm. At that age, it's like, they don't have the best attention span. And and then over time, I realized he's no longer knocking on my door wanting to show me something. And it's not that he's mad at me. It's not that he's disappointed. He's just like, when I go to dad, I don't get the response I'm looking for. So I'm just going somewhere else. Mm-hmm. At that age, they're not upset. They're just looking for the result and the response. So just like the bond didn't break in one big event, it was little small things like that. It's also not going to be restored in one big event. It's going to be a lot of repetition and consistency that they can count on. I was wondering where you were going with the training concept, but that is very, very true. That over and over and over, they're going to see that and they're going to take care of themselves, right? And then the problem is that when they have their kids, that they were really trained. So you have to break it at our level. You have to get rid of that self-conscious. Well, I waved or winked to them, but didn't open the door, didn't put it on mute, didn't walk out and even tell them, I want to see what you're showing me. So what would you, if you wanted to tell an entrepreneur like me in probably 30 seconds here, what could they do if they hear this? What could they do just right now, today, to start that process? Yeah, as far as getting their time back, I'd say every founder knows that there's some low-hanging fruit that, just think to yourself, what am I doing that I shouldn't be doing, and start there, and then figure out what do I need to do to get that off my plate, and that's the easiest place to start. Every founder knows that there's a handful of things. So that's the kickstart. In other words, if you're going to quit smoking, which I did 30-something years ago, and I thought it was the most painful process in the world. I mean, I really thought I didn't want to live without cigarettes. But then all of a sudden a day goes by, 2 days go by, and a month later you smell it and get interested, but you're done. Yeah. So you're that small step forward of saying, I am going to delegate some stuff. I am going to not get on that call because the only reason I'm getting that call is because I've always been on it. Mm-hmm. Find that those easily disposable things and get rid of those first, and then call you and say, all right, I did that. What do I do next? Absolutely. Right? Yeah. Just like there's frameworks to get you out of your business, there's frameworks to reconnect with your family. And there's a lot of, great books out there, great information on kind of figuring out some of the business stuff. I like to say I've done a very good job with mine, but there's not a whole lot about, okay, we've got that part handled. Now what's next? Mm-hmm. And so I love to focus on that part. And hey, let's not mess this up. Your son has a podcast. We better talk about that really quick here, because he's going to listen to this podcast and say, Dad, I know, Dad, you're supposed to show me some love. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like I said earlier, I taught my son how to negotiate real estate at 8 years old. And that's just because he's homeschooled. He hangs around with us. He gets to see what me and my wife are doing. And one of the things we started about 6 months ago, a little under 6 months ago, was starting a podcast. And I was his first guest. And he's like, Dad, I really want to just talk to people who are doing things in business. And I was like, okay, son, let's start with me. And we didn't really know if we were going to publish the first episode, because it's just like, let's just like a practice run. And then I had it edited down, and I was like, it's a nice little tight episode. Let's call it episode 1 and launch it to the world. And as of this recording, we're almost at 100 interviews. And if you combine all the gross sales that all the guests have publicly spoken about, because not everybody talks about that stuff, it's in the multiple billions. It's like $5 or $6 billion. And we have a few that will eclipse that on the books just by their own, by the one guest. So we're getting places with it. And what's the podcast name? How can people find it? leointerviews.com. Okay. That's awesome. That is really cool. I can't wait to watch that and hear how he sees the world. So, yes. And we would love to have you on. Okay. I'll do it for sure. Well, it's great.
great to get to know you better, and we're going to have a great week here in Las Colinas and get you introduced to everybody in there and try to turn people into super dads and super moms and still have great businesses. So
love it. Thank you, Jimmy.
All right, have a good rest of the week.
You too.